So we can start this closing session. Commissioner, Alicia, ministers, friends, if we were in the United States, I would say, wow. But since we are in Europe, we say, it's beautiful, very beautiful to see all this. A lot of people, a lot of engagement, a lot of participation. I think it's a bit the European way in the making. So what happens in these development days? It happens that, just a few figures, so far, and certainly the calculations by default, 8,700 more participants registered. And I'm sure there are many were unregistered, irregular participants, to be with a bit of solidarity with some of our friends from Africa in Europe. Second, 180 actually, journalists, 50 partnership with the press. And since we are not good in counting, we didn't finish the list of the quantitative indicators. But since inequalities was a debate about not only quantity, but about the quality of our, let's say, joint work, I can say that the level of the debate, the level of participation, the level of enthusiasm that I've seen personally, around, shows that this idea to talk about the quality of the development, and not only about the indicator of the GDP, but to look at real substance as taken. And by the way, I also noticed that, as it was logic to imagine, that the link between what Europe is doing outside and what Europe is doing inside has been underlined by many. And I think that this is very understandable because, when we say we are expressing in our international cooperation and development policy a bit the characteristic of the Union, solidarity, inclusiveness, well, in the moment when we give a spot on these inequalities is more than normal that we are asked, yes, but you are exporting really inequalities too? What is your situation on this? This is a way to, let's say, to talk about the SDGs in a different way. We say the SDGs are global. Okay, this, I think the message has been seen. And therefore, many ask Europe, how you're doing in all this. Therefore, this, I think, is particularly important to link this global agenda of development, of international cooperation, which wants to be a way of being Europe, value, practice, failures in the world, to share and to put something in motion as a result of an alliance. This is a bit what I take out of this, many panels, many discussions, so beautiful, I have to say. Now, just not to spend too much time in other words, because there are many words, I would like to call on Alicia Bárcena, the Executive Secretary of the CEPAL, to come here and to deliver, say, some messages from the perspective of a multilateral, and tell us a bit what has been your experience, what is some concluding, say, thinking about that, and the input for what next. Alicia, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefano. Dear Commissioner Nevens Mimisa, dear Stefano Manservisi, dear all, distinguished and maybe extinguished at this point in time, everybody. I am here also in representation of Antonio Guterres, the Secretary-General of the UN, who has given me the task of saying why inequality is so important. Why today and why here? Basically, I have to say that between the UN and the European Commission, there is a common view of inequality. Inequality is a threat to sustainable development. This is what you say. This is what we also say. So why is today the time for equality? First, because inequality is inefficient from the economic perspective. It's generating irreversible costs to the economy. Secondly, because it's a right and it's a political and ethical imperative. Punto. Thirdly, because it is time for intergenerational equality. And the Secretary General has requested me to speak about youth. Why is youth so important? I see a lot of young people, old people too, I have to say, but young people. Because the world is today younger than ever. You know, 1.8 billion are young people between the ages of 10 and 24. And 4 out of 10, 42% of the global population is under 25 years old. So this is affording us an unprecedented opportunity of social progress if we make it right. In my region, Latin America and the Caribbean, we have 163 million young people between 15 and 29 years old. However, our region is at crossroads, and maybe youth is also here at crossroads, maybe all over the world. Because what happens is that one path symbolizes promise, expectations, even promoted by the media, no? The youth, the wonderful, the future, whatever. But on the other, we have the dangers of a slowdown of a once promising economy, which is posing already threats to the economic and social progress. 64 of the young people of my region is living in poor or vulnerable households. 64%. I mean, come on. So what is going on? And therefore, they don't have access to education, to good jobs. And I think one of the aims of our region, at least, is that these young people should have secondary education. And that is because that is a window to go directly into the technological revolution and vocational training, at least secondary school. Because employment and decent work, and we have said this, you have said it, we have said it, ILO has said it, all the UN, all over the world, decent jobs is the master key to combat inequality and poverty. And youth in unemployment has to be our first priority, because this gives young people emancipation, liberty, freedom, and dignity. This is why I think we have to work on this clearly, because if not, the sharp disconnect between expectations and realities are generating, undermining trust and social discontent. And that is why one of three of you, young people, do not want to participate in electoral processes. You're abstaining, you're saying, why? Why should I go? I don't have anything to gain here. And also because we have to make sure that we are also incorporating young people, because what's happening, for example, in Latin America, one-fifth of these 163 million people of young people are in the informal sector. And another one-fifth are what we call in Spanish the ninis. The needs, they're neither study or work, But this is very unfair for women, you know, because the majority of the needs or ninis are women, because they are caught in teen pregnancy or in the care economy with non-remuneration, so unfairly they are kept out of the labor market. So we have to work, we have to do things. So for me, this is one of the greatest inefficiencies of inequality from the economic perspective, to leave the demographic bonus, all these young people, out. What are these young people doing? Well, they go to drugs or to illegal economy. This is happening in Central America. Who are the ones who are migrating? Young people from 15 to 25 years old. So that's the problem. But the young people want to participate, right? Because you don't want to be only the object of policies, you really want to be part. And I think this is what we're talking about, and this is why equality has to be a driver of growth. And in my region, we are combating also the culture of privilege, because in our region, there are many privileges. The elite, you know, the ones who always win, the winners of everywhere, the usual suspects. And what happens in a region like ours? The indigenous peoples and the Afro-descendants are the ones who are suffering the most, because they were either on forced labor or slavery. Their land was expropriated, their beliefs and their values were suppressed. So we have to, young people, youth of this room and of all over the world, we have to combat that. And who is showing us the way? Greta Sundberg, that young woman who has led the largest youth protest in the whole of history. Because we are, I mean me, unfortunately you, unfortunately our generation, we are responsible of this intergeneration myopia. We. You're not. We are. And this is what Greta told us, that we are probably the first generation that has all the information to combat climate change and poverty, and we're probably the last that can do something about it. And this was not said by me. It was said, I think, by President Obama, and many people repeated it. But this is true. And the other thing is that in this digital world, you are the first generation of digital natives. We're struggling, my generation struggling to understand it, but you're not. You are growing with digital things. So what we need to ensure is that you also take care of the digital divide. And that's what I'm calling for, dear colleagues. We must invest today. And that's why the United Nations has made a strategy on youth. Antonio Guterres has been very, very firm on this. And we have to make sure that we combat inequality, because inequality conspires against development. Let me today, dear colleagues, I want to really pay a special tribute to Stefano Manservisi and to Nevens Mimisa. If you allow me, I will ask for a big applause. Yes, yes. You know, yes, I have many years in multilateral cooperation. And the legacy of these two is going to be impressive. You're going to remember, mark my words, development in transition, climate change, Eurosocial, Euroclima, oh my goodness, you have made a great difference. And allow me just to finish and end by recalling one of Latin America's greatest poets, Mario Benedetti of Uruguay. He wrote a poem that said, "What is left to the young," he said. "Still left to you, the young, is to recover speech and utopia, to be young with no rush, but with memory, to extend a helping hand, to open the doors from your heart to the heart of others. Most of all, it is left to you to build a future despite the ruins of the past and the sage villains of the present." Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you very much through you to Antonio Guterres and all the commitment that the UN system is putting in not only defending but promoting multilateralism. And on this, the European Union is at the forefront, or had the ambition to remain at the forefront. But without your support, could be just an empty statement, so is living. I would like now to call here Samuel Irga. Samuel, please. Samuel is an Ethiopian concert pianist, which is part of the so-called Myesha Trio. Myesha Trio has been an invention, let's say, a project which has been promoted by our delegation to the European Union in Addis Abeba. Jean is with us, with all our colleagues which have been working on that. It's an experience of Euro-Afro music, or Afro-European music. And I think it is extremely exciting because it's a project of doing together and of producing also, let's say, a sort of mix, but not accumulation, a reason mix. And I think that Samuel, who, by the way, I mean, having the privilege to have been in Ethiopia several times, I was very much appreciating on a personal basis the contribution to the renewal of the Ethiopian jazz, which is absolutely fantastic. Therefore, Samuel, please, with your group, we have here a bass and a percussion, just to perform a bit of this Myesha, which for those which are interested then will be also available on, let's say, on a digital support, because really worth having this and listening to. Samuel, please, with your group, take the stage. Che lei poi deve essere italiano addirittura. So since now we have to change a bit the stage, I'm told, and therefore I have to improvise a bit, I think the best way is to give you a bit the floor to explain a bit this Myesha experience and also a bit of touch of your music, because this is, I think, could be a great interest of all the audience. Your experience, what you took out of it, what next?
About Myesha?
Yeah, about Myesha.
Yeah, Myesha was really interesting and amazing project that I've been part. We had 6 musicians from Europe and 6 musicians from Africa, and within a very short time we delivered something amazing. As a musician, I didn't expect that short time to deliver such a beautiful result. The beauty of fusing cultures or gathering together within culture is that you understand the values, you understand the problems of each other, and you become someone to bring the solution. So we use the music to bring solution as a continent. It was like one small world in one small compound, but our world was far away from that compound or away from that area we were together. So the result was amazing. I am sure people will love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now I think we are ready to pass to the next phases, but this is real great music. I would like to say, not only the Myesha, but Sami and his group is really fantastic. So let's try and find a way to distribute the Myesha experience in our delegation. By the way, thank you very much, Jean, because you are doing a lot of good job in Addis Ababa. Thank you. Please. And so because it's really good piece of music, not only the result. By the way, the link between the colloquium culture and here, which in the making, I think it was telling. Now, Nas, please come along. Nas is well known, I think. As you call it, influencer.
No, I don't like that word.
Important guy. Well, fine. Good. So you see how many people. So
oh my
now,
goodness.
Since you have been traveling, you have 13 million followers.
Yes.
As per today. Now, you have more later on. You have traveled to 61 countries in 1,000 days, doing 1-minute video. This, congratulations, you've done better than me, usually one omission. So it's already good. I have to learn also to do videos, maybe.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have the best, let's say, actor to tell us a bit what is your pitch about inequalities in the world, what you've seen.
Great.
What you can tell us.
All right. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes.
Yeah, for 10.
And I'm going to use slides. You go, slides.
You see.
Okay. All right. I'm going to address them. Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. How are you? I flew for 15 hours from Singapore to come here and talk to you for 10 minutes. So please, you better pay attention. Anyway, for those that are not familiar with my work, my name is Nas from Nas Daily. A little bit about me, my name is Nosair Yassin. It's a complicated name. I grew up in Israel as a Palestinian. It's even more complicated of an upbringing. And I decided to go by the name Nas because it's just much easier. What do? I just make videos and I put them on the internet. It's as simple as that. I decided to quit my job and try to make 1,000 videos in 1,000 days. The videos are about anything that I care about. If I care about something, I make a video about it and I put it on the internet, and it's no more than 60 seconds. The videos, I decided to make them not just from New York, not just from Los Angeles, but also from 55 different countries. To my surprise, people actually wanted to watch these videos. They were viewed of a total of 4 billion times on Facebook and amassing over 13 million followers of this 1,000-day journey. It blew all my expectations. Now, this journey was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also one of the most insightful things I've ever done. And the one question people tell me, Nas, what was the thing that impacted you the most out of this 55-country journey? Well, that question is inequality. Let me tell you a story. I was in India, in Mumbai, making videos. And I decided to splurge for one day, and I decided to stay at the Four Seasons Hotel for one night. It was $300 per night, and I paid it. I go to this suite. I love it. It's nice. It's spacious. It's luxurious. I open the curtains, and I see poverty. Lots and lots of poverty. I see slums. The Four Seasons, apparently, was built right next to slums. And that was the first time in my life where I saw extreme income inequality. It made me uncomfortable because I was there spending $300 a night for a bed, and these guys next to me, no more than 10 meters, were spending $300 a year to live. That, obviously, there's something wrong with that. So, I made a video about it. And to my surprise, again, millions of people cared about this topic. Millions of young people on Facebook or Instagram really cared about this, and it bothered them a lot. So, the next day, I decided to take it a step further. I decided to try to live like a poor person, like one of the people in those slums in Mumbai. According to the World Bank, you are only poor if you live under $1.90 per day. So I decided to live on $1.90 for one day. And guess what? It was really, really hard. The whole day, for 24 hours, I had to only think about saving money. Getting free water, not bottled water because it's too expensive. I actually got food poisoning from that water, poisoning, to sleep in places that are not hotels, to sleep in like a Sikh temple or on the streets, and to also eat the leftovers that the poor people would normally eat. And that 24 hours has literally transformed my life because it made me realize the only thing I was thinking about is how the hell do I survive? I wasn't thinking about going to conferences. I wasn't thinking about making videos. I wasn't thinking about building a business. I was only thinking about how to survive. I made a video about that topic as well. And as expected, this topic resonates with millions and millions of youth people around the world. It's something that a lot of people care about. Now, this experience has taught me that there are two worlds. There's not one world. That's a lie. There's two worlds. One for the not poor and one for the poor. For the not poor, you buy $60 shirts, no problem. For the poor, you have to settle for the less one. For the poor, you have to eat the biryani. For the rich, you have to eat the nice-looking food. And not only is it food, not only is it clothes, not only is it house, it's also opportunity, it's also education. And that is what resonated a lot with people. Income inequality is not just a problem in India, it's actually all over the world. And do you know how easy it is in today's world to show it? You just take a camera, turn it on, and take a picture. And you get something like this. That picture, it speaks 1,000 words. It talks about the systematic failures of a society, the systematic failures of a country. And it's not just Brazil. It's many countries around the world. And all it takes is to take a picture, put it on the internet, and millions of youth are going to share it, reshare it, share it again, and they're going to get angry. It's a problem. It's a bigger problem. It exists in Brazil. A lot of it exists in South Africa. And a lot of it exists back home where I come from, between the Jews and the Arabs. And now the next question I'm always asked is, well, Nas, how do we fix income inequality? Luckily, I don't have to answer that question. It's not my job. My job is to show you income inequality. The people's job is to be angry about it, and your job as the government is to fix it. It's as simple as that, because it is my deep belief. Oh, thank you. Not you. And it is really my deep belief that in the next 5 to 10 years, more and more people will have drones. More and more people will put this stuff on Facebook. More and more, this income inequality problem will become a bigger problem. And I really hope that you guys do something so that so that the poor people can stop thinking of how to survive and start thinking of how to live. Thank you guys so much for your time, and thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. I mean,
Thank you. Thank you.
If there was a case to explain what inequalities are from different parts of the world, you gave a bit. With one exception, the plate. I think that the biryani was better than the other side of the plate. Thank you. Thank
I
you
agree
very
with
much.
that. Thank you so much, Director General. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
So thank you very much, Nas. And then, I think we should do more influencing, even if you don't like the name, but let's influence in this way in order that people wake up and see what's going on in the world. So now we have the panel with the young leaders. Therefore, I would like to call here Letícia Pinheiro, Moala Muto, Letícia Pinheiro from Brazil. From Brazil, so therefore you can ask her a bit. Moala Muto from Zambia, Rejoice Namale from Malawi, and Margaret Arach-Orich, founder and director of the Uganda Landmine Survivor Association, and Arancha González, ITC. Please. So, here we are a bit with these young leaders. I don't know if I have, there is a place for me too also. Well, who is missing? Is missing Margaret. Where's Margaret?
I'm coming.
Ah, Margaret, coming. Welcome. Please. So, in short, because the young leader, they have been with us very often. I mean, it's an idea that we had in order to not only to give voice, but to give protagonism to young and at the same time leaders. So, meaning not only giving impulse, but also taking responsibility of what is going on. I think that this is interesting because we have, since we started this in 2015, and we had 60 young leaders so far from 41 countries. 404 young leaders application this year, so you have the happy few. And they're in the representation of the 15, which have been selected out of these 404. So I think that, by the way, it's quite easy to start a question to Letícia, because you were confronted with a quite dramatic picture about Brazil. She's a rich country, no? GDP-like and G20-like and many other aspects. But, what is the situation from your point of view? What are the biggest challenges that, not only in Brazil, but in general, you think that should be addressed?
Youth are catalysts for social change, and we are at the forefront of driving sustainable development around the world. So I speak now in their names. And this week, we are here to discuss inequalities between and within countries. However, these inequalities will not be addressed unless we act immediately on climate change. And that was what I want to emphasize today. As youth, we are aware of the importance of investing in long-term gains that will benefit not only us, but future generations. And when we visit the EU Policy Lab at the Joint Research Center, climate change and environment degradations were one of 14 megatrends. Megatrends give us foresight. And as everybody here knows, climate change now have the potential to worsen all the SDGs. It has a particular effect in agriculture, migration, health, peace, production, and consumption. Action for the environment can have a long-term positive impact across all sectors. It's most important, as we discussed the Agenda 2030, to also think of the urgent agenda of the next few years. We need actions. We need actions have a strong and sustainable impact. This is why we are demanding for actions, not merely promises. Climate change must be included and be a priority as part of the political agenda, involving policies, but also adequate and substantial funding. There is a strong role for all levels and actors, which should be recognized, including local authorities. We should ensure a local approach in addition to our national frameworks, fighting against this climate crisis. By 2050, two-thirds of all humanity will be urban. Sustainable development cannot be achieved without changing the way we build and manage our cities. We need to design smart and sustainable cities, which are also inclusive. So far, our cities are being flooded. Millions live in slums, not having something as basic as a bathroom and water. We are being suffocated by pollution of industry and cars. We could list each disaster for you here today, but you are already aware. We may choose to see our cities as part of the problem, but we can also see them as a lever for change. We, young people, we want investment in public transportation. We want green spaces in a city where we can walk without having to cough up pollution. Everything that we are discussing right now will not be possible if women are not at the table, if the youth and the most vulnerable communities are not at the table, because the path to sustainability will be pointed out by those historically excluded from power. We are aware that so much needed climate change action demands funding. We are anticipating that. That's why we urgently ask our governments to not only create public policies, but also deliver action by finding new sources of financing, like the sustainable use of a public procurement. As youth around the world, we are doing our job. We are striking. We are here. We are constantly reminding everyone that it's not longer a climate change, but a climate emergency. To our mayors, presidents, and ministers, we are not here begging for your help. We are here to demand your action and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Margaret, Arancha, what do you think? Urgency, youth, a disaster of climate. Margaret.
Thank you very much for that elaborate presentation and bringing the voice of youth into this arena where we are all gathered to try to find the solution of making our world a better place. It's true that youth are a catalyst for change, and it's true that most of us who are here will sort of phase off, and then the youth take off from where we have left. And the youth definitely need that empowerment. They need all that support to enable them carry up the work that we have. The bigger challenge that the world is facing is in the area of climate change. And I've seen a lot of youth initiatives in tree planting. There are some of these areas where we can also try to alleviate or to reduce on some of the impacts by planting trees You talked about the designs of the cities where floodings happen, and these floodings also not only make the city unpleasantable, but also causes death and brings also more sickness and disease, which in the end also needs a lot of funds to be able to care for. So yes, the inclusiveness designs in the cities that are smart and not over flooding, and the safety that you mentioned is really very imperative for total inclusion of all people. And here I speak on an angle like of a person for disability. And I also know that with most of these designs and plans that we can put in place to alleviate some of this, it's the work of civil society to carry out the advocacy. So a united voice between civil society organizations, youth, and including government can bring about some positive change. Thank you.
Answer.
Well, let me say, Leticia, that I love that you started with this long-term view, because I think part of the problem we have is this short-termism that is ingrained in our system. Governments are only thinking about how they win the next election. Businesses are only thinking of the next quarter profit margins. We are all impatient. The result of which is that we are not thinking in 30, 50, 100 years terms, which is where we are not thinking of what we are leaving to the future generations. So I really love that you bring this issue of long-term to us. As I like a lot that you ask us to maybe, you've been very diplomatic, so let me just try to be very little diplomatic. You've basically told us enough talk, just get to do stuff. And what I thought listening to you we could all do is, as we leave this room, before we cross the door, we think of the one thing we are going to do in the next few weeks, in the next few months, that will help us address inequality. And maybe starting with the inequality that really bothers me, which is the inequality between men and women. And maybe we expand it a little bit, not just men and women, but we also think in LGBT, those that don't think in binary categories. So thank you for that.
Leticia, do you find inspiration and alliance and support for this? How do you think?
What I think that we have to understand is that inequalities is a reflection of the structure of our society. Mm-hmm. And to change and to address this inequality, we need to bring those who are historically excluded to power. Women, indigenous people, black people. We need that most vulnerable communities to be heard and to act, because those are who will point out the path for sustainability.
Good. Now, after having identified the issue and also defined a bit of completing this, in particular on the gender, Mwala, if we look a bit forward, I mean, how we can work in partnership in order to personalize all this, to work, to bring it forward as a concrete agenda in partnership.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. You know, as young people, every time when we sit and listen to our policymakers and government officials telling us about sustainable development, it is very interesting. The figures are very nice. The articulations are always okay. But when we sit in our circles, we ask ourselves the question, where do they go wrong because we don't see the impact? Now, that is why we have to speak about addressing the inequalities. Because it seems that there is a lot of money that is being pumped in fostering the 2030 agenda, but there is very little impact because the resources are not being distributed equally. And I think it's important that the EDD of this year has focused very much on addressing the inequalities. Addressing the inequalities between girls and boys. Addressing the inequalities between young women and men. Addressing the inequalities between rural and urban youth. Because this is very much important if we are to foster sustainable development in our communities. It is important that we start investing much more in job creation, in vocational trainings for young people, in digital markets, in ensuring that young people are more involved. Now, as young people who are here at the EDD, we are recommending two things that are supposed to be done. The first thing we want to recommend for more investment in youth and youth-led organizations. Fellow development partners, as young people, we don't want to sit on the discussion table as spectators or victims that need help. We want to be key partners in development. We want to be involved in decision-making. We want to be involved in decision-making, in government positions. We want to be involved in private sector as key contributors running businesses. We want to be involved in international development so that we can also bring the youth vision of the problems that are facing the world currently. It is very important that you have invited us to come and speak to this event. And this shows that the voice of youth is being heard. And it just requires that the voice is more bold and louder so that impact can be seen in our communities. These are the kind of partnerships that are needed. First and foremost, we need to ensure that young people are also benefiting from the funding that is given to organizations. In most cases, when we speak about funding, funding is directed to bigger organizations, of which in most cases there is no youth representation. It is good that we have come up with initiative like the AU-EU Youth Hub, which is a very good initiative that will assist in fostering sustainable development on the African continent. But as young people, we feel that some of the conditions that are set in the core of proposals that are there for funding are too stringent for our little organization or our youth-led organizations to meet. For example, a condition that you need to have had previous funding of 2 million euros for you to access the funding that is there is too much. We can't afford it. Most of the youth-led organizations don't have such previous fundings before. Therefore, it is important that the funding opportunities for young people are opened up so that we can also be inclusive. Because if you keep on putting these stringent measures, it is only the usual bigger organizations where there's no youth representation who continue participating. And when they go on the ground, they will not involve us. They will just call us for workshops, and there's nothing that is done for us. The next thing is that there must be more investments in ensuring that young people are going to be involved in different activities that are there. Young people are going to be involved in the procurement system. Young people are going to be involved in fostering climate change and creating an enabling environment for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The second thing is invest in gender-responsive financial services. We cannot address inequalities without addressing the gender gap. And we have to start addressing the gender gap from the youths. If there is inequalities among boys and girls, the gender gap will still continue. Therefore, it's important that doors are opened for the girls. My education as a boy should not be prioritized over the education of my sister. My sister should not be sold out because I'm supposed to go to school. Therefore, we need to take into consideration all these issues as we are speaking about sustainable development. The women, they have to be empowered because these are our mothers. When you go on the ground, you realize that the women are the ones who hold our homes. Some of us were raised by single parents. So it's important that women are given access to financial literacy, are given access to finance through loans. Women can have bank accounts. Women can have access to ownership. When you go in most of the developing countries, to be specific in Africa, most women don't have access to ownership of land. They have to go through their husbands. And when the marriage ends, they lose everything. Therefore, it's important that women are financially empowered also. Now, the question is, how do we foster all these issues that I've spoken about? Partnerships. It is very important that we foster partnerships when it comes to sustainable development. And when we speak about partnership, it is not just about partnership with the public sector. In most cases, as international corporations, when we speak about partnership, we only want to focus on government. But there are also private organizations that can yield more benefits. If you go on the ground, you realize that there's a lot of money that is pumped in the public sector, in the government. They'll say, we are going to empower young people in this particular field. But when you go on the ground, the money is used to buy expensive vehicles. The money is used for workshops where they'll be paying themselves per diems. So it's important that we engage the private sector also. Public-private partnerships is very important. I'll give a perfect example of a public-private partnership that can work very well. In Africa, we have an organization called the Tony Elumelu Foundation. It empowers a number of young people. Every year, they fund 1,000 young people, train them in businesses. This year, they have funded 3,000 young people. And it's actually good that other international organizations have come on board, like the African Development Bank, the UNDP, to support all this. So this is good partnerships that can foster sustainable development in the developing world. And as young people, we are here to say we are committed to ensuring that this agenda is focused, and we are going to be key partners in sustainable development. Thank you.
Good, Mo. Well, you've been particularly representative of the young leader. Arancha, first you.
It's very unfair because Mawala brought his fan club with him. It's very difficult. Let me tell you two things, Mawala. First, that I fully agree with your two asks. On your first ask, which is invest in youth, I was once upon a time, I was also a young woman here in Brussels, and I used to hate it when people would say, we are working to provide you with opportunities and to empower you. So I would suggest that you do what I thought I had to do, which is just go and run with it. Don't ask for permission. Just go and do. Wherever you see the opportunity, don't wait. Go. The second is an offer. ITC is all about she trades, women in trade, and youth and trade. Young people trading, young startups. 21st of November, Addis. That week, we will be holding together with the EU and the AU a youth and conference where buyer meets seller, investor meets investee, influencers meet potential clients, and where you will get a chance to say what you want, how you want it, and from when you want it.
Thank you.
Monday, Tuesday, youth. Wednesday, Thursday, women. So all of you are invited, 21st of November, Addis Ababa.
Thank you.
Margaret.
Yes, civil societies, yes, and global organizations have over time spoken in a united voice to establish common position on global issues, including that one of youth, and it has yielded a great impact. And their collaboration with state entities, no doubt, is one of the best channels supporting actions for positive change. We know that we have governments in place, and we have ministries, and within the ministries, there are responsible ministries for youth issues. It is also imperative for youth to be able to tap into the development programs within these government ministries. It is a channel where they can start from. We know also that investing in job creation is one thing, but the mindset of white-collared job needs to change, because I've seen many graduates from the university 3 years, 4 years after graduation, no job because they are looking for a white-collared job. Maybe we could invest in looking at creating jobs, entrepreneurship, that can enable youth to be able to earn this decent living. We know also that civil societies are needed for development, and youth can also be part of this body, and we know that the civil society bring in the global agenda into the national priorities and complement government efforts. So definitely, we can't leave youth behind, and we need to work hand in hand with the youth. I appreciate the voices of youth because they are the voice of change. Thank you.
Mwala, action with wisdom. What do you think about this support?
Oh, the support for youth?
Yeah, for him.
Oh.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you have a call, just run. And then Margaret said, yes, but look at the content. Now, have been inspired by this to build partnership?
Yes, we are very much inspired, actually, and we would want to be more involved, and we appreciate the work that you are doing so far, and we are willing. That is why 400 young people applied to come here. This shows that youth want to come forward.
Okay.
Speaking about the issue of moving away from white-collar jobs, I'm glad to mention that of the 15 young leaders that we have here, more than half of them are running their own registered organizations, creating jobs. So what we just need is more empowerment, more engagement. Then we are going to be key partners in development.
Good.
Yes.
Now, Rejoice.
Yes.
Now, we spoke about the framework, we spoke about the partnership, action, wisdom, etc. Where? Which area? Which are the priority? Which pilot action?
Okay, everything has been said. Thank you, Mwala and Leticia. Now, I will speak about education and effective youth participation, which my fellow young leaders and youth at large believe are directly linked. Now, there's about 200 million youth in Africa. Thus, there's a high demand on job creation for us. But now when you look at impoverished communities, the youth are actually the breadwinners in their families. So now you're asking them to either choose between quality education or feeding their families, which is very inconsiderate. So why don't we find a mechanism to actually integrate education and economic prosperity? That is why I believe that education and economic prosperity go hand in hand or collaborative. However, we the youth are now concerned about the scope, the quality, and the delivery of education. We believe that the current education system is not matching with the 21st century needs. As I already said, we're asked to be in school full-time, but we're also asked to create businesses for our economy. Now, there needs to be a link. There needs to be a balance that should be created. Education needs to encompass both soft and hard skills, theoretical and practical skills, vocational skills, digital skills, something that can enable youth to sustainably help themselves and their families while still acquiring high levels of education so that they can be able to also stand here and effectively communicate to everyone in our audience, just as we as the young leaders here are doing.
Good. Margaret, skills, digital, not opposing education and growth and economic activity. What do you think?
Yes,
what is the suggestion you can give?
Okay, it's not that we are opposing education versus the economic activities, but we are saying that there's been a lot in education, there's been opportunities, but the lack of jobs. If we are going to sit and wait until jobs are created, that will be the big challenge. So I still insist there is need to take initiative and create jobs. I know of, in the area that I live in, a graduate who failed to get a job, and she decided to take on waste disposal, collecting garbage from a housing estate, and this is on a housing estate of over 2,000 homes. And she has opened up like 3 or 4 different branches and is doing extremely well and is also an employer. So these are just some of the areas I'm citing, not that I'm saying it's not right to have education and then go in for low menial jobs. Yeah.
Good.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
At the end. Okay. Because Arancha will for sure inject also a bit of action.
Well, this is a topic that is very close to my heart. My dad was a teacher.
Yeah.
My brother is a teacher. My uncle was a teacher, and I'm a part-time teacher. And what, in my view, allows us to stand on 2 feet is the ability that we have to feel that we have the skills that we need in order to go out there and rock. Now, I think the biggest challenge we have today on education is not acquiring knowledge, it's learning to learn.
Yes.
We are going to have, and we just had a panel before this one devoted to education. The biggest challenge we have, whether it's in Africa, in Europe, in America, anywhere, is that we are going to have to change jobs many times, many more times in your lifetime than in Stefano or my time, and that requires learning to learn. And that's a whole new skill that is not just transferring knowledge.
Joyce.
Yeah.
Then?
Okay, I just wanted to mention that skills acquisition is one thing, but now youth are being faced with limited financial assistance. We have vibrant ideas, exceptional ideas in all regions, Africa, Asia, and beyond. But we're still being asked to provide high-value assets such as a car, vehicle, land. How do you expect a 17-year-old with an amazing, brilliant idea to be able to provide this when they're living on $1 a day? It makes no sense. Therefore, my advice is in twofold. It is that policymakers, firstly, policymakers ensure that youth are at all levels of decision-making, especially the initial phases. When you're setting the agenda, youth should be included. If it is for youth, it should be by youth. If it's not, then it is against the youth. So let's ensure that youth are the ones that are creating relevant policies, because they will enhance our good governance systems. To youth as well, it is important to have financial assistance. It is great. But I would advise you to flourish with the scarce resources that you have. Flourish with the scarce resources that you have. If your talent is speaking, be able to speak well, be able to sell your product, your service. An investor will then be attracted to your idea, and it can be executed. So find ways and mechanisms of making your dream become a reality. Yes.
Good. Now, this is a powerful call for standing for youth. Leticia, well, what do you think, sort of, after this exchange? Are you better equipped? You are supported, you feel supported, you feel that once back as a young leader, you can drive your community, including your supporters here, the other young leaders, in order to generate movement. Because, allow me to say, partners can do a lot, but if you don't stand for your future, it's difficult. So what do you take out of all this? Leticia.
Since I arrived here, I was inspired, not only for the other speakers, that was impressive speakers in these rooms, but mostly for my young colleagues that are in the front. It's really an honor to speak in their behalf. And it's really important to understand the links of all the subjects that we discussed today. Education, how it impacts health, how it impacts also city planning, and also gender equality. There are cross-cutting subjects. We cannot tackle one inequality without seeing the whole spectrum. And that's what I believe in the EDD, thinking of how we can link and cooperate to build a better society.
Good. Voilà.
I think I'm very happy to be in this place. It was my first time to come to Europe, and I was very excited when I got on the plane and meeting all of you that are here, the commissioner, the DG, the senior EU officials who were very friendly. They gave us concrete information. For the first time, I've gotten to understand what the European Union is, the European Commission, the European Parliament. These are terms that we just hear about. But this is great exposure for us as young people. I've gotten a number of business cards here. Some people have already invited me for certain meetings. And this is what sustainable development is. You have brought us on the discussion table, and we are committing ourselves that we are going to be key partners by engaging you more. Thank you.
Thank you. I think two things. One, I always consider partnership is bidirectional. So therefore, we allow you, but you're encouraging us, which is, I think, Commissioner, very important, to give this in order to invest in youth. Invest in youth and invest in youth. This is the message. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to all the other leaders which were just represented, just standing, please. And thank you all of you for this debate. So now we have a small film, small movie, which is showing what we have been doing during these 2 days. Then Commissioner Mimica will deliver the closing speech, and after we have another musical show. We have the Magic System, which will perform another moment of music. So the small movie, then if you want to remain here or to go down, in any case, thank you very much, all of you. Small movie, then Commissioner Mimica, and then Magic System from Ivory Coast. Movie first.
solidarité et égalité, c'est un devoir de tous les jours qui s'impose à chacun d'entre nous. Et lorsque des inégalités apparaissent, qu'il faut y remédier.
Now, Commissioner Neven Mimica, please, if I may say just one thing. They are good commissioner as a politician, but they're also, and more rare, good commissioner because they are really leaving a human trace in what they did, because believing, supporting, and having a human dimension that everybody will recall because of your presence. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Please.
Thank you, Stefano. So, very good evening, distinguished participants, dear colleagues and friends. After a wonderful display of music and film and inspiring words of Nas, Mwala, Rejoice, and Leticia, it is now my turn to thank you from the bottom of my heart for another successful edition of the European Development Days. Over the past 2 days, we have come together, young and old, men and women from different walks of life and from different corners of the world, to discuss, learn, and inspire each other as we continue our quest to leave no one behind. There is no denying that we have a mountain to climb to reach the summit. The summit being a peaceful and prosperous world, free from poverty and hunger. To conquer this mountain, we have to conquer inequalities. Inequalities stand in the way of sustainable development for all by 2030. They hinder economic growth and undermine the effectiveness of our development efforts. They threaten democracy, stability, and social cohesion. They leave those least responsible for climate change and environmental problems suffering the most. The 2030 Agenda provides us with an unprecedented opportunity for positive change, from decent jobs and economic growth to good health and quality education, to the empowerment of women and girls. The Sustainable Development Goals can be formidable tools for addressing all kinds of inequalities. So, how exactly can we grasp this opportunity? And what can we change in our development cooperation to achieve a real impact? Just a few days ago, the European Commission published a reflection paper, reflection document, on addressing inequalities in our partner countries. It shows just how serious we are about putting inequalities front and center of the European Union's external action. It looks, for example, at how we make inequalities part and parcel of our development programs and projects in a way that really makes a difference to people on the ground. This means adapting to the specific circumstances of each partner country. It means integrating inequalities in the European Union's multi-annual programming phase. And it means systematically assessing and taking into account how people in different parts of the income distribution are going to be affected by new initiatives. But ultimately, what will really determine our success in our quest to leave no one behind is the strength of our partnership. There is scope for the European Union to bolster strategic partnerships with institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, with the UN systems and agencies, and we also need to work further with financial institutions, particularly when it comes to implementing our external investment plan. And needless to say, civil society plays a critical role as watchdogs, advocates for equality and agents of change. These are partnerships that we must continue to protect and cherish. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last time I will be addressing the European Development Days in my capacity as a Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development. So, it is with emotion that I deliver this closing speech. I'm truly proud and humbled looking back to what we have achieved since I stood before you for the first time back in 2015. We adopted the most ambitious global blueprint for prosperity and peace in history of mankind, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we geared the international cooperation of the European Union and its member states towards the achievement of these global goals through a new European consensus on development. We launched the process that will culminate in a new partnership between the European Union and African, Caribbean and Pacific states after the expiry of the current Cotonou Agreement next year. We teamed up with the United Nations for the Spotlight Initiative, unprecedented in terms of scale and scope, to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. And we revolutionized our approach to development financing, adding the European External Investment Plan in our array of tools, which is expected to leverage 45 billion euros of new additional investments by 2020 in Africa and the European neighborhood. The first European Development Days took place in 2006 under the auspices of my dear predecessor, Commissioner Louis Michel. We have come a long way since then. We closed the chapter of the Millennium Development Goals and opened the one of the Sustainable Development Goals. We moved from a perception of development defined in terms of donors and recipients of aid towards a global partnership encompassing countries at all stages of development. And we have given to young people, civil society, the private sector, academics and innovators their rightful seat at the table to come up with joint solutions to the common challenges we face. Yes, we still have some road to travel to get to where we need to be by 2030. However, looking around the room at this development community and the next generation of leaders, I am confident that our future is in safe hands. So thank you all for your energy, your passion, and your drive to make our world a better place. So thank you once again very much for your engagement, for your enthusiasm, for your contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, to fighting inequalities, and now the better part of my closing intervention comes with music. Thank you.
So, Magic System from Côte d'Ivoire now, touring around Africa, and maybe touring around also Europe one day, on what makes Africa and Europe friends, about values, about challenge, about explaining a bit Europe in a better way that we are able to do very often. You know, a bit in the NAS style, NAS with the blog, and then with the music, and going around and being, you know, the best ambassador of this different way of seeing the partnership, which is not necessarily a Marshall Plan, as people say, but rather a real friendship and partnership in building a better future for everybody, as Commissioner Mimica just said. So now the Magic System, I think, is arriving slowly on scene. I will sit and watch.
Hey, Bala Willivier, Bala Willivier, Tieko, yeah, là-bas. Et tiens, consolant, bonsoir, monsieur, dame, Coco Brico. Magic System vous dit à quoi bas, à quoi bas. Luce.
Yes, I.
Merci, Luce. Un. Voilà. C'est dans ma galère que la gomme tout m'a quitté. C'est dans ma galère que la gomme tout m'a quitté. Quand j'avais un peu, matin, midi, soir, on était ensemble à la rue Princesse, au milieu maquillot, à Salfo, payer la poulet. Quand l'argent est fini, tout a changé de côté. Waribana, elle a changé de copain. Dieu merci pour moi, je savais chanter un peu. J'ai fait ma cassette, on me voit à la télé. Matin, midi, soir, c'est moi, je chante à la radio. En tout avis, c'est le cas où à bercer. Attends, je vais partir le couper. Mais on dit premier cas où n'est pas cas où. J'ai rien entendu. Deuxième cas où qui est Nyatao. On dit premier Gaou n'est pas Gaou. C'est deuxième Gaou qui est Nyatao. Dimanche matin et Coco, on frappe à ma porte. À ma grande surprise, c'est la go en tout, je vois. Assemblage, j'ai dit, il y a longtemps, c'est plus de vie. Elle veut me mentir, elle dit chérie, j'avais voyagé. Je suis de retour. Je t'appartiens, mets-moi cadeau, fais ce que tu veux.
Tout le monde.
Mais on dit premier Gaou n'est pas Gaou.
Plus fort.
Deuxième Gaou qui est Nyatao. Je dis chérie Coco, qu'est-ce que tu veux manger? Sans même hésiter, elle me dit poulet braisé. Pourtant on te dit premier Gaou n'est pas Gaou.
Sunayo.
Deuxième Gaou qui est Nyatao. Je dis chérie Coco, c'est poulet tu veux manger. Poulet est trop petit, ça peut pas te rassasier. C'est caïman braisé, je vais te donner. Que Dieu nous éléphant, oh. Tu vas manger, oh. Nangere, nangere, wa. Nangere, nangere, wa. Elle est fâchée, elle s'en va à la maison, oh. Si elle va à la maison, coagulation va me tuer, oh. Je lui ai demandé pardon et elle a accepté, oh. À un moment donné, elle a tout gâté, oh. Elle a quitté dans poulet, s'en va dans loco. Et d'ici c'est à loco, c'est pas compliqué, oh. C'est plantation de bananes, oh. Tu vas griller, oh. Au lieu de fourchette, oh. Ça peut pas te piquer, oh. C'est un gâteau, oh. Tu vas manger, oh. Nangere, nangere, wa. Nangere, nangere, wa. Mais on dit premier gaou n'est pas gaou, oh. Deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. Tout le monde. On dit premier gaou n'est pas gaou, oh. Deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. Bonsoir. Bonsoir à tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone. We're not actually here for this, in principle. It's true, everyone expects Magic System to provide music, but actually we've come to bring you a very important message. I'd like to ask you to sit down, take a seat, because this is serious. Don't worry, we'll continue the party afterwards. But before we continue partying, I've got a very important message for you. For those of you who don't know us, we're the group Magic System. We're from Côte d'Ivoire. We are from a poor area of Abidjan. And you know that we talk about inequality, and inequalities are born in that area. But we've had the opportunity and the good luck to leave that area and have a wonderful career. Our career has enabled us to provide a cultural link between Africa and Europe. But when you leave an area like ours, you want to look in the rearview mirror and say, look, we've left people behind. There are people who are still living as we lived when we were young. Because what is inequality? It is the fact that not all children have the opportunity to go to school. It's when young girls are told that their place is in the kitchen, washing the dishes rather than going to school. And we said to ourselves that we needed to take a step backwards. We needed to go back, because one of the values of Magic System, and obviously you can't be an artist without wanting to share what you have. And so we decided to go back and do what we could to help, because we had difficulties going to school. We had difficulties getting the care that we needed. We said, let's set up a foundation. Now, we're not a state, we're just a small group. There's a limit to what we can do. But why don't we enable some young children to go to school comfortably, to give some people the opportunity to look after themselves properly? And that's why we set up our foundation. Every year, thanks to our promoters, and thank you the little spec shows that we have in different places, we've managed to set up a small school with 6 classes to enable young children to go to school. There are 5 Magic System schools now. 5. And I said that an artist shouldn't just stop. An artist can contribute to the development of his country, can do more than make records. And so that's why I wanted to take this opportunity this evening to thank the European Union, which believes in culture, which believes that culture can be at the service of the people. We've talked about a new alliance between Europe and Africa, but that alliance between Europe and Africa, if it remains just economic, political and diplomatic, then I don't think we will have made any progress at all. To progress, we also need an alliance between people. We need synergies so that we can share our values. And Magic System has agreed with the EU to set up a tour in Côte d'Ivoire, and we're going to call that the EU Côte d'Ivoire tour. And this will be an opportunity for artists to meet the population, to talk to them, to exchange ideas, and to try to understand their needs. We also want to get our messages across and share our values with those people. So, with 30 different artists in Côte d'Ivoire, we're all going to get on board a bus with the ambassador of the European Union on the bus, and we're going to go around 17 cities in Côte d'Ivoire. Obviously, we're going to sing, but we will also be taking the opportunity to talk, to eat, to do everything alongside the local populations. That is the new approach. And I think when you say that we have a cultural bridge between two continents, we have to show that through music we can have this channel of communication which is very credible and which enables us to talk to the people on the ground. And so we'd like to send out a message to all the governments. We want you to put music at the heart of, and culture at the heart of the work that you do, because music is an important channel for getting a message across. That's why we're here this evening. We've interrupted our tour to be with you, not just to sing for you, but to get this message across to you. Thank you.
Alors maintenant.
So now that I have put the message across, now we're going to give you a chance to dance. So do stand up and dance.
Vous êtes prêts pour le show? Alors, je vais voir les mains en l'air comme ça.
Put your hands in the air, everybody. Hands in the air.
Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air.
Allez, allez, allez.
Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air.
Tout le monde les mains en l'air. Tout le monde, on y va.
Levez les mains en l'air.
Allez, allez, allez.
Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air.
Allez, allez, allez.
Comme d'habitude, on est calé.
Oh, eh, oh.
Comme toujours, ça va aller.
Ah,
On te met l'ambiance à gogo.
oh, eh, oh.
Tous ensemble, on fait le show. On t'invite dans la magie. Y a pas de raccourci. Oublie tes soucis et viens faire la folie. On t'invite dans la magie. Y a pas de raccourci. Oublie tes soucis. Oh, 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 oh. Magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. C'est pas seulement pour les bobos. Nous on vient d'Anou Mambo. Dans le niveau. Tous pour t'enjailler. On t'invite dans la magie. Y a pas de raccourci. Oublie tes soucis et viens faire la folie. On t'invite dans la magie. Y a pas de raccourci. Oublie tes soucis. Oh, oh, oh. Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Fil de magique India. Levez les mains en l'air. Fil de magique India. Levez c'est bruit du go, go, go. On vient du ghetto pour aller plus haut avec les magiciens. Oh, oh, oh. C'est le magique indien. Levez la main, allez. Allez, allez, allez. C'est le magique indien. Allez, allez, allez. Levez la main, allez. Tout le monde, tout le monde. Tout le monde. Allez, allez. Levez la main, allez. Allez, allez, allez. C'est le magique indien. Allez, allez. Levez la main, allez. Allez, allez, allez. Merci. Somalie. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Merci. 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 Merci.